What's up, everybody? Welcome to another episode of the All Smith Project. I'm excited today. I get to chat with someone who's dedicated to helping you move without limitations. He's the host of the fitness industry's most popular biomechanics course, and he's an incredible educator, none other than Conor Harris. What's up, man?
Thank you for having me on.
Dude, I'm pumped to chop it up today. You've got a whole bunch of programs, some amazing content on Instagram, but most importantly, what attracted me to you, dude, is the vibe. Like, you can tell that you started from humble beginnings and you've gone through the woodwork to really sharpen your sword, craft your expertise, and connect with people. And that's what brought me in right off the bat. So I appreciate you just being unapologetically you. That's the cool stuff.
Thank you. It's cool that people recognize that. That's a really nice compliment. And I try to have that be expressed. I try to, have myself like authentically be how I would talk to anyone through my content. So it's cool to see that, because I think people can naturally get a sense of that. Like, you can see your popular Instagram or YouTube influencers, and it's always weird when you talk to these people in person or just like through a conversation like this, and they're just not the same person. And it's like you're playing a character online. And to me, that's unattractive. So I try not to do that to the best of my ability.
I like that answer. And you're totally right. And sometimes people get lost in the weeds, right? Because it's this gamification of attention. Oh, when I behave that way, I get rewarded for it. And if you want to predict behavior, typically you just have to look at the incentive. And if somebody's getting rewarded, whether that's monetarily or with the likes, the views, and the engagement, as a byproduct, that might subtly kind of reshape who they are as a human being. And we've seen it time and time again. And I just really appreciate that you're holding true to yourself, which is very cool. And I liked what you said. We got to chat briefly offline. You said something that's really important in your developmental career and in the pursuit of success is liking what you do, but more importantly, liking who you are doing it. And you said it the first time. I said it the second time. When I say it, what unlocks in between your ears?
I think it's a lot of what we just talked about, but I think honestly, I think like what we just talked about is a big part of it. I think if you're trying to play a character, then I think that you can only do that for so long before people either start catching on or you start resenting yourself for it. So I think success is being able to be yourself. And if you like yourself, then ideally, you would just be that person in front of everyone. But I wonder if it's like, for some people, they like the character they portray more than they actually like themselves. And I wonder if that plays into a lot of these people like gravitating towards like being that person, but that's draining. Like, I don't want to do that. I don't want to like have someone have this kind of conversation with me and then they go watch my content and I'm, pretending to be this like super high energy, like extremely over the top individual. Like, that would, for me, caused me to eventually start resenting myself, and then my quality of work would suffer.
Yeah. I might be bastardizing this next story a little bit, but one of my favorite guests I've ever had on, he's become a good friend, Laird Hamilton, the big wave surfer. He actually played, I forgot the name of the character. It's gently dancing outside of my mind right now, but he played a character on the movie North Shore. And that character, he was supposed to play the role of like taking other people's waves, kind of being like the cocky surfer douchebag. And that's not who he is at all. He's playful, he's explorative, he's tinkering in the lab of life and very inclusive to the environment and to the community, and just trying to find unique combinations of things to innovate and push the boundaries and seek edges. But he played that role in the movie, and it bled or diffused into his life. So then when he was traveling around Malibu or different places, people associated the character with who he was. And that was very difficult for him. And I can only imagine some of these actors and actresses that are playing roles, 3, 4, 5 times a year, and how you can kind of get lost in that type of identity. And you make a really good point, man. Like, it is difficult, but it unlocked that memory a little bit. And Laird was really strong in his value system and in his character to not allow that to infiltrate his ethos and how he chose to orient and interact with others within his day-to-day. And what I'm curious about, Conor, is what was your connection like with your upbringing and your parents growing up, where this value system was very strong? Because you started in your career kind of volunteering. You were an unpaid intern, and it takes courage and guts to go that route, realizing that, like, I believe in me and that this is going to turn into something. But in the beginning, it's like there's uncertainty, fear, doubt, and you're just trying to be a sponge.
Yeah, I think honestly, like, my upbringing was probably upper middle class. So it's not like I grew up poor or anything like that. But one thing that I do attribute a lot of like my mindset and a lot of my success to is actually my dad. And he passed away in 2020. I was living in North Carolina at the time. And so he passed in his sleep, just totally peacefully. Probably the act of it was probably not peaceful. I think he had like an aneurysm or a heart attack. We didn't do an autopsy because it was just too traumatizing for my mom. But that gave me the opportunity to move back to Oregon and just take care of my mom for a couple of years and just help her through this process. And so that was like the best and worst thing that ever happened to me, really, because breaking off from North Carolina and what I was doing there gave me the opportunity to start my own business and become an entrepreneur. But I never would have done that if my dad hadn't instilled in me. He would tell me probably like twice a week, like, Conor, you can do anything you want. Like, you can do anything that you set your mind to. And he would tell me that over and over and over again. And to me, that was something that I kind of rolled my eyes at the time. And I kind of was just like, all right, Dad, whatever. But thinking about the subconscious impact that had on me, it really made me think that because there were several times in my upbringing where, like, for example, I used to play the piano, and there was this one song that was just totally like out of my league. And my hands weren't even big enough to play it, but I wanted to do it so badly that I basically got the whole thing down in a couple of weeks. And my dad like referenced that situation in that instance over and over again as like, if you really want to get something done, you'll get it done. And I think a lot of people are like that. I think a lot of people are capable of really getting something done if they genuinely want it. But to be told that, I think, is very powerful. And that really helped me believe that what I was going to do was going to be successful. Because I think a lot of entrepreneurs get in the mindset of like, they just second guess themselves, and they're constantly like thinking too much about what they're doing and just putting themselves out there. And it's so hard for people to just like film themselves talking and just post it. When in reality, like, I think I kind of benefit from this tunnel vision and also blissful ignorance of like, I don't really think about it that way. I don't think about who's going to see my content, if that makes sense. I don't consider like all the potential high level individuals or just like old people I went to high school with maybe that are going to see this. Because if I do that, I'm going to get in my own way. I'm going to think too much. I'm going to cringe at it. And then I'm going to probably not end up posting things. So because I have a mindset, of I genuinely believe what I am going to do will be successful, and B, I try not to get in my own way. Like, I think that's been the two things that have been the most helpful, because I just post it and then I don't watch it again. I don't want to see it. I just go, okay, this is out there now. And I think having that blissful ignorance has honestly kind of helped me continue to put myself out there. And then you hear, people like yourself want to connect, and it's like, hey, I like how you put yourself out there. It's like, oh wow, okay, that's cool. It's cool to hear how other people interpret sort of like the person I am when I make the content.
No, I like the context. I like being able to see behind the curtain a little bit as to how your thought process is associated with the content that you create. Move fast and break shit. LSKD develops functional sportswear with a streetwear aesthetic that's on a mission to inspire you to chase the vibe through sport, fitness, and adventure. I train daily in the rep shorts and love the versatility they offer. The zipper pocket is an absolute game changer. I go from training at the gym directly to meetings, running errands, or prepping for podcasts. The LSKD tribe has become true family, and we are excited to continue to develop our community. Shop now at lskd.com and use code ALLSMITH. We chase the vibe here at AllSmith. Let's all become 1% better every day. But a huge takeaway there, I think you said it a few times, is that word belief. Your father instilling in you a value system of, hey, no matter what, you have to have this intrinsic motivating factor that even if it's not successful right away, it will be, just not yet. And then you're able to kind of sit with it a little bit and really kind of push the boundaries of what maybe your preconceived notions were originally. And I really love that. And I also want to note one more thing. There's that famous song, I think it's by the band Perry. It's funny how when we die, the people start listening, right? Like my father passed away in 2018. It was a huge recalibration for me as to starting this listening tour in the podcast, which we discussed briefly offline. But it's like they said so many great things while they were alive. And then when they pass away, we start holding on to them. We start recycling them and then sharing it with anybody that will listen. And I think that's a really special thing that you shared there, that at the time, you're very honest around, man, he said this all the time, believe in yourself. He referenced the piano experience. And at the time, it was a gentle eye roll. And now that he's gone, you hold on to that and then you share it. And it's something that floats in your headspace around, when I make content, I believe in this. I'm genuinely trying to solve someone's problem. But I'm also not going to go back and psychoanalyze and develop paralysis by analysis. I'm going to put it out there, and I'm just going to trust. And as a byproduct, it's shown bravery, courage, and consistency, which if you take those three pillars, leads to a pretty successful entrepreneur.
It does. Yeah. I think a lot of people, like I said, they end up just thinking too much. And for me, like, it's almost like frustrating for me to watch. And I was like, it's just like,
just go for it.
Just do it. But I mean, that's so much easier. It's easy for me to say that, right? It's easy for people that have already been there to do that. But it really is just like, you just got to do the thing. Like,
real quickly though, you're there now. Were you thinking that way in the beginning when you were first creating content, or were you like 15 to 30 takes on certain things before you have the courage to be like, I'm gonna post it?
I mean, simply because I was uncomfortable in front of the camera, I would stutter a lot for sure. So in that sense, yes. But in terms of just wanting to put myself out there, no. And that's not because, I like the sound of my own voice. I actually hate it. That's not because like I want people to see me. It's because I really, really believe in the information that I'm sharing. And
That's
I'm like,
cool.
People got to see this.
Are you a big writer? Like, do you write down things first? Do you create a prompt in the back that in the beginning you were reading off of? Or are you just kind of so well dialed now through practice and repetition that it's just become unconscious competence that you're able to be like, hey, this is something I experienced today. Seems to be a trend-worthy post because a lot of people seem to be having this particular pain problem. Here's what I think will be helpful.
It's more so that, yeah, I've taught the information so many times that I can just pick something and then roll with it. I just get in front of a camera, press record, and go. I think there are pros and cons to that. I think that can lead to a lot of content creation, but I think that also comes at the cost of sometimes not refining it enough to the point where it can be concise. Because like what's hot right now is like short, very like fast-paced reels. Like that's the thing on Instagram that people are really responding to, and it's really hard for me to do that because my content is too complex. I can't just be like, I see all the time mobility stuff, and it's just like a 3-second reel or like a 10-second reel of 3 different exercises that so clearly look like, like let's say tight hamstring fix. Well, for me, it's like your hamstrings might be tight because they're actually in a too lengthened position and you actually need to shorten them. So actually maybe turning them on might be helpful. Like, how do you say that in, 10 seconds and have the average person respond to that? For most people, it's just like hamstring stretch, and everyone can like see that thing and identify with that thing and like that thing. But for me, it's not that simple. So that's always been the battle that I've had, to be able to explain something in a different way, but also not go into too much detail. So I think being able to write stuff out in advance might be helpful, but I just frankly find that boring and monotonous. So I just press the record button. And if I need to record it again, then that's what I do.
I like that. Rinse and repeat. We talk about it often. Writing fills the gaps within our thinking. The pen to paper helps us kind of organize the ping pong ball in our mind in association with kind of the category that we're maybe ruminating on. But something that I also really like is time and time again, man. I mean, I've been in a gym space for 30 years. I mean, from an athlete to a coach to an intern to all kinds of different angles. And very frequently and often, people will see a mobility routine and they'll try to mimic it, but they don't do it correctly. So then they're missing some of the specificity or nuance that will actually give them more bang for their buck in less time. And so I think your approach is really dialed in the sense of you're providing the detail orientation necessary to squeeze the juice out of that orange, but not so much where it's marinating the human being in monotony, and then not so little where it's, wait, what did he do? How do I mimic that? And I'm going to go try to replicate it, but I don't really do it the right way. And screw this, I'm just not going to do it. Your goal is education, compliance, and then consistency. And I think you're doing a good job of like finding that middle ground. And, sometimes it will be not enough. Sometimes it will be too much. But I think you have to tinker with it to find that harmonized space in the messy middle.
Yeah, I think another thing that is hard with my content in particular and exercises is that they're sometimes a little bit nuanced and hard to find and feel the right things unless someone's in the room with you. So like I'll get someone reaching out to me and they'll be like, hey, your stuff doesn't work. And I'm like, okay, well, there are about 1,000 different reasons why something might not work. For me, it could be, well, the most common things I see is like people just have a hard time taking the exercises and implementing them on themselves, coaching themselves through them. And that's probably mostly on me because maybe I'm not communicating it right, or like maybe I need more angles in my shots or whatever. But ultimately, it's just so hard to get someone, no matter how much detail you give them or how little or how like nuanced or without, it's for some people, they just can't get themselves to do it right. And I have to accept, this was a very hard thing for me over a period of time. I just have to accept that like some people aren't going to respond to my stuff, even though my success rate in person is quite high. Online, it's not the same if someone takes it and tries to do it themselves. But what I hope is that, and what I found, thankfully, is that people that don't necessarily get the result they're looking for understand that the perspective and the methodology is different enough to believe that there actually might be some aspect of this that is quite helpful. And they're just like, I just don't have it dialed in yet, which is why at that point, working with someone in person is very helpful. It's just that this stuff is so new. It's so different that it's in its infancy, frankly. And so it's hard for some people, it's just like, dang, like you're in India. I don't know where to send you. Or like, I don't know what to tell you. And that to me is heartbreaking. But I do hear you on the idea of like people just simply not doing this stuff right. And I appreciate you saying that I communicate it well, because that's something that I try to pride myself on.
Yeah. I also often think about like risk versus reward, or nothing to something. And I would rather somebody attempt to do additional movement or mobility and do it wrong than not do it at all. Right? At the end of the day, like movement's still movement. And in my opinion, when it comes to mobility, the best position is the next one. The worst thing you can do is probably what we're doing right now, which is sitting still. And I think at the end of the day, like even if they're doing it wrong, there's a little bit of exploration. There's curiosity. There's buy-in because they're probably in pain and they're doing it in the pursuit of getting out of pain. And so by kind of tinkering and feeling different things and maybe contracting different muscles or breathing in different forms and fashions, it's almost like a child playing in a sandbox. Their craft may not be this masterpiece, but they're learning through the participation and enrollment in the process. And that's what I really also like about what you're doing is like you're inviting people in a low barrier to entry, free resource that if they want to excavate it even more, they can purchase different programs or go deeper. But at the very least, by just playing or showing up, you're getting some sort of benefit. And that's the tip of the iceberg. And I think a lot of people should like hold on to that component and toss that in their back pocket, because I heard Jesse Itzler talk about this. It's called the 18-minute rule. And I like thinking about that, like 9 a.m. and then 9 p.m. If you do something 18 minutes a day, 365 days in a year, it's equivalent to roughly 100 hours within that year. If you do something for 100 hours, now you're in the top 95% within that craft. If you start on January 1st, hypothetically, with a mobility curiosity, and you embark on that roughly 18 minutes a day, every day throughout the year, some days are going to be higher intensity, low intensity, moderate intensity, same game with focus. I guarantee you're going to be better on December 31st. You're going to be more curious, more well-versed, acquire a ton more knowledge from different thought experts and thought leaders out there by simply making time, carving out time to participate. What are your thoughts on that?
I wonder from like a pain perspective, how many people in pain, I wonder this myself all the time, like of all the people that I help get out of pain, how many of them are getting most of the benefit from simply like having a plan they believe in and moving? You know, like I wonder how much of it is that. And I think that's why a lot of traditional physical therapy can work for some people and it oftentimes doesn't work for other people. I think the relationship you have with that person is very important. But ultimately, I wonder like, hey, if you just like really believed that walking would fix your pain and you just walked for 18 minutes a day, like how far would that get you? Like, I really do wonder that. And I think that there's a lot to be said for it. You know, I think it's easy to think that your methodology or like the things that you do are so different or cool or it's the best thing ever. But in reality, it's like, does the person believe in what they're doing? Because I can tell you honestly that the people that come into my gym and have an idea of what they're getting themselves into and think that this is going to work, it's like pretty much a 100% success rate. But for those that are curious and skeptical and they're a little bit hesitant, it is way lower than 100%. So I found this to be a pretty strong correlation. I think that goes into like the biopsychosocial model. But I think the most important thing is like, can you get the person to buy in? Like you mentioned, getting that first is key, which is why I think having objective testing is really important. So like what I try to do is I try to have something that's like simple, like it could be anything as simple as like a straight leg raise. Does your straight leg raise feel bad initially? Yes, that hurts. And when you do that, that hurts my low back. Okay, let's do something basic. Does your straight leg raise feel better and your low back feel better? Yes. Okay, now you have buy-in. So I think that's what's missing in a lot of these approaches is like there's no objective way to tell that something is working or not working. People just like give exercises or prescriptions or whatever, and they're like, all right, see you in a week. I'm like, okay, why would I ever do that when I could just actually do something that will tell me whether this thing is successful or not, rather than just banging my head against the wall and just like playing whack-a-mole with different symptoms.
I like
I'm on
that.
a tangent right now for sure, but
I mean, not really. I mean, it takes me to my next question, which
The Trident family taught me something really important this last year.
that we are all a bundle of stories, both good, bad, and everything in between. All of their cold brews remind their customers that they are part of something bigger than themselves. I start my day with the Sweet Cream Cold Brew as I am prepping my mind and body for fitness, service, coaching, and podcasting. With various locations in San Diego, they offer over 14 nitro cold brews and a variety of specialty drinks. You can find the perfect brew and pair it with one of their treats from the Keto Bakery. You can check them out over at tridentcoffee.com and use code ALLSMITH to take your coffee experience to the next level. Is very much somebody walks in with pain. Where do you start? Right? Like, do you do a full body approach, and do you do a full assessment? And then my other question to subsequently follow that is, the CrossFit mindset is always core to extremity. So a lot of therapists or practitioners will look at the spine and the pelvis, kind of first. What's going on there? What's going on diaphragmatically? And then there's the other question of cervical being the neck, and then cranial kind of being the mouth and jaw. And you've kind of been a trailblazer in that type of conversation. And it's always confusing to me from the outside looking in. It's like they all work, but somebody comes in emotionally, they're probably like, nothing's worked, Conor. Like, I don't know what to do. Like, I've been taking NSAIDs. I've seen X, Y, and Z practitioner. They're sending me to physical therapy. I can't seem to get to the point where I have the ability to get an MRI, so I don't have imaging. It's a whole slew of things. And I'm sure they dump it on you, and you're just like, well, how are you? And you're just trying to just collect data. And then over the course of time, you're like, you know what? Let's start here. Let's do an assessment, and let's go from there.
Yeah, that is pretty much the thing. And I think the most important thing is to help your potential new client feel heard and understood.
Agreed.
That is so important. And I know that that's like very cliche, and it's like, something you're going to hear two dudes talking on a podcast all the time about that. But it really is like an extremely important part of the process. And something I was told that was a really good marketing, but also like interpersonal sort of strategy to use is that, like, if someone comes in and they're like pissed off, like be pissed off with them,
Oh, that's cool.
They're like,
misery loves company.
Exactly. I'm so upset that like this isn't working. Like, let's say you gave them an exercise and it helped, but then it stopped helping, and they're like all pissed off about it. And they're like, shit, I'm sorry that happened. That sucks. Like meeting their energy, I think, is very important in whatever way is reasonable and rational. And whatever that person's energy coming in that initial assessment is important to match and meet too, I think. So I try to do that in my own way. And other than that, like, yeah, the question is like getting them to appreciate that, first and foremost, like, you guys are humans interacting. But after that, like, I'm very fortunate in the sense that people that come to me have an expectation of what they're going to get, because I do zero marketing for my gym. Don't run a single ad, don't run anything. People find me on YouTube and they just happen to Google my name and realize I'm in Portland, Oregon. And they're like, I'm in Portland, Oregon, so I'm coming here. And so people know what they're getting themselves into, which is great. And that's very intentional on my end, because I don't want to have to necessarily explain to people why what I do is so different. If it's just immensely better if they already know what's happening and why I'm going to have them breathe for their ankle sprain, So I'm going to do a full body assessment, and I don't necessarily agree that it's good to start at one area and move out from there, because I think everyone has such a different thing that is going to be causing their issue. Like, I'm going to look at the lowest hanging fruit and address that. And oftentimes that is their breathing strategy, their ability to like stack their head, their rib cage and pelvis, and be able to do that in different positions. Like, that is a big thing. But if someone comes in and they've got shin splints, but their biggest issue is that their neck can't turn to the left side, then that's what I'm going after first. And I have had so much more success with that.
Really?
Than just trying to fix their shin splints. Yeah.
Have you ever gotten pushback of like, dude, I came to you for my shin splints and you fixed this problem, but I still have that problem?
Well, the good thing is about what I do is that, so for example, let's say like something basic like knee flexion, the ability to bend their knee typically is limited when you have shin splints. If I do something that improves your neck rotation to the left, then many cases your left knee flexion should improve
That's
because the
so
body
cool.
knows. Yeah, the body knows. Like it's not like it's some magic thing. Like I don't think it's fascia. I don't think it's like, muscles suddenly like turning off or turning on. I think it's like the brain allowing movement. I think the
Mm,
brain is influencing our mobility for the most part. They're like keeping tension, not keeping tension. It's all like perception of safety. And so if you give the brain the ability to feel like it's safe on one side, things tend to open up on that side. And so I'll take what they're saying into account and I'll say, okay, let's measure the knee flexion. And I want to show you that there is a correlation here with how your neck turns. And every single time that increases buy-in, unless the person is like a complete neurotic mess. And at which point I probably don't actually want to work with that person because
interesting.
they're the type of person that is going to think that they have more answers than me and they're going to fight me on everything. And I don't want to work with that person.
Yeah. I like that boundary that you're drawing there, and also laying the groundwork for recognizing that it's not just the one thing. I think Kelly
Mhm.
Starrett from the Ready State popularized, like, when there's an issue, you typically want to look upstream and downstream. And that's not
Mhm.
always, if you have a knee issue, that's not always quad and shin or tib fib. Like, that could be even higher, even lower. And I think it's
Mhm.
really cool that you take into consideration the energy of the person that walks in, the state. Are they angry? Are they sad? Are they just kind of mundane because they feel like they've kind of calloused every single attempt to mitigate their pain? And then from there, you're kind of assessing the totality of their movement and realizing that it is, correct me if I'm wrong with this terminology, but nervous system derived. The
Yeah,
brain and the spine are kind of dictating, do I have perception of safety to unlock some of these tighter tissues?
definitely. Yes. I mean, like literally just by having you, let's say I had you lay on a table like this one right here, and I measured your shoulder internal rotation, like just, elbow out by your side, dropping the arm and, the forearm and the wrist together.
Very
You
popular
probably
because
have
people want to
limited.
snatch more.
Exactly. Yeah. Yeah. You probably, and I probably right now have some degree of a limitation in it. But if I were to take binaural beats and I would put those headphones over you on that table and I would play like 300 hertz, your shoulder internal rotation would drop all the way to the table,
Oh, wow.
or it would improve like 50 degrees or something like that, because that is going to create a parasympathetic nervous system response, and that's going to decrease your body's perception of threat, and that's going to allow you to improve your range of motion. And so
Wow,
like
that's
I
really
think that's
helpful,
such a,
man.
yeah,
I feel like a lot of
totally.
people are living in this fight or flight sympathetic state of feeling like more is better. I'm not doing enough. I'm not good enough. I need to be loved. I need to do X, Y, and Z all the time. So their perception of safety is just this chaotic shitstorm. And you
Mm-hmm.
mentioned the binaural beats and 300 hertz. You say per second?
I don't know, whatever the slider is, you just take it up to 300 and
Got
then
it.
play it and then
And
see
do
what
you
happens.
use an app for that, or where can people access that? Is it on Spotify? Is it on
Mm-hmm.
YouTube?
Oh yeah, there's like free apps all over the app stores that would have that,
Okay, that's really
and
cool,
they
man.
can play around with it. Bump it up to like 600 and see what happens.
Okay.
Watch your range of motion get worse.
Oh, really? So that's the sweet
Mm-hmm.
spot's right there around 300.
Yeah, it could be like a little bit more, a little bit less, probably less for a lot of people. But that's like the sweet spot.
Dude, that's cool. It just shows how much like our senses and something like sound and smell can then shift our headspace and our ability to either ramp up or ramp down. What's the kind of
Mhm.
breathing protocol that you suggest for people to then integrate within the binaural beats and maybe some of the range of motion protocols that you're suggesting?
And what's cool about that is I always teach people how to breathe first because it is so foundational to creating a parasympathetic environment within your body. And I say, okay, like this breathing strategy you're going to learn now is going to help you basically on every corrective exercise I give you moving forward, because I want the strategy to stay the same. But I don't want you to breathe like this, obviously, under like an 85% back squat. You know what I mean? So it's different, but the environment is dictating that your respiratory strategy is different, because we want different nervous system input and response. So something that's more corrective, I don't want you to go as hard as you can. I don't want you to squeeze and go more, harder, faster, stronger, which is like a lot of mobility stuff, is just shove yourself into a position and own that position. I don't think a lot of the times people are actually moving through the joints they think they are in order to like really move their hips in that way. I think a lot of that's coming from your low back and you just don't really realize it. But that aside, the breathing strategy I coach it's so important. And it is just like a nice relaxed sigh, exhale through the mouth. And then at the end of that, like you feel your rib cage come down and you feel your abs, your side abs, your internal obliques kick on a little bit. And that's the cue that you have your rib cage in a good position where it's in an exhaled state. From there, you just slowly and silently inhale through your nose. And that will help you then expand your rib cage from front to back. But the key is that people can't engage their neck when they do it. A test I have, kind of a screen, is when they do that protocol, do they feel their neck engage? Nothing will lock up a body faster than someone's neck engaging. So a cool other experiment people can run is just like be in a side lying 90-90 position and then exhale and breathe just like I did, just like I explained, and then do it right for like 5 breaths and then measure your shoulder internal and external rotation. But then do it again. And when you inhale, engage your neck like significantly. And then retest yourself after 5 breaths. And your range of motion is dramatically worse. And that creates that sympathetic environment. So a big key for me with a lot of my clients is, can you just get into this state and not use your neck? Like I've literally had people start crying because it's like, oh my God, I didn't know that I was so stressed. I'm living in this stressed out state. Like people are like, I can't shut off my back. And so just getting them to do that is huge. And I think there's a mechanical benefit to that, but I also think that there's primarily a nervous system and just like self-discovery response within that, where it's like, oh, this is relaxation. This is so different. When was the last time I took a deep breath like this? Like I had a girl yesterday and she's like, every time I take a deep breath, I almost get this panic response. And I feel like I'm frankly going to have a panic attack a lot of the times. But when we really taught her what it felt like to slow down and breathe, she's like, taking deep breaths, no problem. And it's just a matter of like kind of understanding where the person's coming from and being able to put them in a position where it's like, hey, this is okay. Like we're not doing anything here. There's no like additional life stress. We actually need to slow down. We don't need to shove you in more positions. We just need to teach you what it feels like to just like ground yourself and be present for a second.
Peptides. There's been a lot of buzz about peptides and what they can do for the body, skin, muscles, and health. What exactly are they? And do they live up to the hype? Your body makes peptides. They are strings of amino acids, which are the building blocks of proteins. Peptide therapy involves using prescription-based peptides to help treat and manage a variety of health conditions to maximize performance. Peptides consist of 2 to 50 amino acids and are made naturally in the body to act as important signaling molecules for many physiological and cellular functions. There are over 7,000 known functions of peptides in the body, and adequate levels in the body are imperative for performing at optimal levels. Discover a transformative journey to optimal well-being with Live Peptides. Live Peptides offer a natural and effective approach to health support. Embrace the difference. Choose Live for a path to vitality that prioritizes quality, innovation, and your unique wellness goals. My personal favorite is BPC 157 with thymosin beta for optimizing gut health, tissue regeneration, and healing. Head over to livenatural.com and use code ALLSMITH for 20% off peptides. That's LIVVNATURAL.com with discount code ALLSMITH for 20% off peptides. Wow, this is really helpful. Something that I'm hearing is so many people are looking at your content and coming to see you thinking it's about the specificity of the exercises and they want to do and really hammer the thing. But it's almost like you're undoing more so
Yeah.
than doing. And through the breathing protocols, creating a safe environment, meeting people where they're at, that seems to be the secret strategy that becomes this digestible smoothie that when people can drink that recipe consistently over the course of time, decrease their pain and get back to doing the things they love.
Absolutely. I think that's a lot of it. And I used to think arrogantly when I was first getting into the stuff I'm getting into, that I'm into now, is that like this is the secret sauce. This is what it is. And so I became obsessed with it and thinking like this is the answer to everyone's problems and this is the way. But what I've realized is that like there are a lot of different ways to skin the cat. And ultimately, what it is mostly about is giving people something that they believe is going to work, like we talked about, and is going to put them in some degree of like a parasympathetic state. And it's going to address kind of what they think is the issue. Like if you give them like, and that's kind of like going back to the conversation about the neck, like I might realize the neck is mechanically the issue, but I have to retest the thing that they think is the problem. You know what I mean? Someone's got a shoulder issue and their hip is the problem. I need to retest the shoulder too. So I think that's the combination. And I find that there are a lot of different ways that you can do that with a lot of different methodologies. But at the end of the day, I think those are the core components.
Yeah, very well said. I want to jump in next, Connor. If I'm going to take my bird's eye view and just kind of observe general issues or pain points within the fitness space, I would say rounded shoulders or forward head tilt. I'll kind of combine those two. That'd be number one, especially with technology and computers and desk work. I'd say sitting too much and improper pelvis position. So I'm going to categorize or combine lumbar or low back with hips. And then lastly, just super tight ankles, minimal ankle dorsiflexion, typically caused from bulky shoes or a ton of running, since that seems to be a low barrier to entry thing to movement. And so starting kind of from that top region with the rounded shoulders and forward head tilt, would you say that that's a major reason why people come to see you? And then how do you address that?
I get less like people wanting to fix their posture and more people that just have these postures that are in pain. And like we know with the literature that posture is not associated with pain in a meaningful way. And that is, I believe, true. But what I think that a lot of the literature is missing is understanding the forward head posture, rounded shoulders, kyphosis, limited ankle, whatever. They're not looking at it in the bigger picture of like, how is this all influencing each other? So, you know, like, yes, if everyone that had anterior pelvic tilt, uh, if everyone that was an anterior pelvic tilt had pain, we'd have a lot of issues, right? That's like, that would be because a lot of people do. Most people have some degree of anterior pelvic tilt. But yeah, so we can look at it and be like, that doesn't mean you're going to be in pain. But if we look at it through the sense of like, how's that anterior pelvic tilt limiting your ability to do the things that you want to do? And how is that affecting the rest of your body? That's not what's being studied. People aren't looking at how those things are influencing other areas up and down the chain and how that is associated with pain. People are just looking at like anterior pelvic tilt, do you have back pain? Yes or no. It's like, yeah, of course not. But if you look at it in the grand scheme of things, if you look at people that have back pain, like what is their posture? How is that limiting their movement? How is that limiting their ability to shift from side to side? I think that's what a lot of the research is missing. I understand why it's hard to measure that. It's really hard to get data on that. I hope to do that one day. But if we go back to the forward shoulders and head posture thing, I think what that really is, a lot of people attribute it to screen time and all that. And I think that is an influence, but I think what it is more than anything else is a poor airway management strategy, a poor ability for someone to breathe. your body is obviously primarily concerned with breathing. Like that is absolutely what needs to happen. And unconsciously, if you can't do that effectively, you're going to push your head forward, and that's going to round your shoulders forward with it over time, because you have muscles on the front side of your neck that can help elevate your rib cage. So that way you can breathe in. So if your breathing strategy sucks and your airway isn't in a good position, that's unconsciously what's going to happen. And I think it's very much multifactorial as to why this happens. If we go to screens, well, if your head is forward, then you're training over time your anterior neck muscles, your front neck muscles, to gain leverage to elevate your rib cage because you're in that slouch position. That's one thing. But that's also you just teaching yourself how to breathe a certain way, and then that sticks over time. I think also what it is with, we could really go down this rabbit hole. I think with a lot of orthodontia, I think with a lot of the way that people aren't getting breastfed as much, with nutrition, with what babies are being fed, and their development of the chew and the swallow is putting their tongue in a really bad position. And I think that that's compromising their airway. And that is leading to a lot more of these forward head postures that we're seeing. And I think overall, just a lack of movement is another thing. Like a lack of growing up and playing, I think, is a really big influence on that too. And so you basically develop a rigid body that can't really alternate and reciprocate. And therefore, it's not going to be very fluid. Your rib cage isn't going to be very fluid and dynamic. You're going to struggle to breathe. So you're going to probably start to kick on some stuff to help you breathe as you get older. So I think that there's a lot of things that influence it, but I don't think it's necessarily like all screens. I actually think it's a lot of what's happening in adolescence, and it's then being reflected as we get older.
That creates a lot of context. I really actually appreciate the way you describe that, because like you said, it's the narrative becomes screen time and just modern development of technology, but you're totally right.
And that's the problem with our industry, is that it's, do you have X pain? Well, or X posture? It's because of the most obvious thing, right? It's like, you have forward head posture. It's because you're looking at a screen. That's the thing that makes sense. Do you have knee pain? Well, go see a knee specialist for that issue. Do you have foot pain? Go see a foot doctor. And so many times when people do that, these specialists don't look anywhere else in their body. And it's like, okay, well, it's not always like, it's not always that simple. Like everything truly is affecting every other system in the body. So if you're going to be so myopic in your perspective and how you treat someone, you're always going to be leaving something off of the table.
For sure. And it goes back to education, right? Like up until more recently, where there's a little bit of a distrust in the healthcare system and in many different elements of our world right now, it was memorize and then take an exam or execute on the other side of that memorization. And it's a lot easier from a business model perspective to scale when there's a specific region to study, because the body and mind and heart and soul and energy, there's so much complexity. It's like, it's never one thing. Where do you start? And I love that you take into consideration all of these different variables. And I appreciate what you said about the orthodontia, and we've seen some of your videos that go against tradition. It's very not normal to see somebody with a towel in their mouth and utilizing a band to do different things to restructure the jawline. And then we've seen jawzercisers. We've seen the different types of gum that come from tree sap that people are now chewing to try to really formulate that nice jawline. What are your thoughts on all this? How do we create more education? Because I've got some buddies that practice some of this stuff, and it's something that's like humorous within a gym setting because it's so unorthodox. But from the sound of things, it could be something that is life-changing for some.
It can be. And I think we're on the right track. I think we're getting there. I haven't watched it yet, but I saw a documentary that was just posted on Netflix about how like braces are actually potentially problematic in a lot of cases, and they're not really the solution to. I watched just the preview and I was like, okay, we're getting somewhere. I don't know what this guy's about to say in the documentary, but like that idea needs to be out there. Not to say braces are bad. It's just that for some people, it is bad and it's not the right thing of what they need. And So I think like we're going in the right direction. Unfortunately, as something becomes popular or an idea starts to gain some traction in an industry, you're going to see a lot of gimmicky crap come out. You're going to see some stuff. I'm not going to like name names of products, but like you're going to see things that's just like, okay, this is like trying to profit off of where this industry is going, but it's just a load of crap. And it's just so clearly like something that is the surface level myopic approach of like, oh, you know, the jaw can influence the rest of your body's posture or its movement. Okay, well, you need to strengthen your jaw. So here's something that can do that. When it's like that is so like short-sighted. You know, your jaw has an incredibly intimate relationship with your cervical spine and your cranial bones and other systems like your visual system, your proprioception, etc. Your obviously your bite. Your bite has an influence on your posture and how you sense the world and sense the ground underneath you, where you are in space. So, like, is strengthening your jaw really gonna fix all that? I mean, probably not. But people don't want to hear that. They don't want to hear that the answer is complex, and a lot of the times it takes multiple different practitioners and a team of them to be able to accurately identify what's going on. So I'm trying to like lead that push, but it's still in its infancy. And I think that we're going the right direction. And I genuinely believe that the best trainers, the best personal trainers and strength coaches in 10 to 20 years are going to be able to identify that, okay, this person is in pain or they can't move the way that I think is normal. I'm going to be able to identify that this person has a tongue or cervical problem or a visual problem with relative ease, and then be able to refer them out to a practitioner that can handle that and is qualified to handle that. Because obviously we don't want personal trainers trying to fix people's bites, or that we don't want them to deal with like TMJ. So I think that's where the industry is ultimately headed. We need to have education around these things because every personal trainer out there, I'm sure like there's some listening to this, we've all had those clients where just they're not normal and they don't respond in the way that everyone else kind of does. And they just can't get out of a pain or movement limitation no matter what we try. And those are the people that I'm kind of talking about here.
Yeah.
And even if it's not like for just performance, for optimization of athletic performance, like that could be a box that could be checked to get that extra 5 to 10%. So I think we're going there. But you know, there is some stuff I see where it's like, I don't know if this is like on the ball.
For sure. To give people some actionable nuggets around recognition from a coaching perspective, what's going on at the bite, what's going on with the tongue, and then what are maybe 3 crucial exercises that you see or utilized most commonly with people that maybe fall into that category of not really the traditional mold. I want to be able to contextualize this so people can have a few takeaways in their journey, because it's something that I think is potentially groundbreaking, but I want them to have the sequence and the methodology that they can have some actionables.
Totally. The first things you can just check in with yourself throughout the day is your tongue resting on the roof of your mouth? And if it is it spilling out onto your molars and kind of like unable to fully rest there? If the answer is no, then that is an indication, not a surefire thing, but it's an indication that you may have an issue with your tongue. So if you have a low-lying tongue, that is a problem. You can check your swallow. When you swallow, do your teeth touch? And does your tongue have this natural sort of like wave as you swallow to start and then at the front and then wave back? Those are things that are like generally easy to identify. The other thing is like, do you have a tongue that has a tie to it? So if you open your mouth as wide as you can and then take the tip of your tongue and try to touch that area behind your 2 front teeth where they meet your gums. If your mouth closes significantly in order to do that, like if it were to look like this, in order for you to do that, that's a problem, potentially. So all these things are indications, right? These are all things that could be influencing your ability to not only like mechanically move well, but also like that can affect the function of your brain. It can cause brain fog. It can put you in a sympathetic state. There's a lot of things. So I think like the biggest thing that people can do, because it is so complex, it can be a little overwhelming for people, but ultimately, like, just make sure that your tongue is at the roof of your mouth when you're at a resting position. When you're
Is that like a neurological like cue for yourself, like in your day to day?
in terms of like what I think about.
Yeah, like are you thinking like put the tongue on the roof of the mouth? Is that something that you cognitively think about?
I don't have to because my tongue naturally does it, thank God. Because I was breastfed and my parents did a good job of like making sure they fed me like good food growing up. So
Yeah.
that was huge. So I don't have to think about it. But for some people, they kind of have to check in with themselves. But the easiest way you can do that is just tape your mouth at night. That's a really easy
Oh,
way.
really?
Yeah, totally. That will help
That's a
ensure
great
that
way
you
to
do that.
create some buy-in around the taping of the mouth for
Oh,
sure.
it's huge. There's a great quote from James Nestor, and it is, or it's Patrick McEwen, one of those two. And it is, if you don't breathe through your nose when you sleep at night, you have no idea what it feels like to get a good night's rest. And that is so true.
Oh,
It's
interesting.
so true. If
Hmm.
you're breathing with your mouth open, if you're snoring really hard, you are not sleeping optimally, and you're leaving probably some ability to feel good throughout the day on the table. And so mouth taping is massively important, but it's not going to magically fix like a significant tongue tie or like a big cranial bone asymmetry or distortion or like a TMJ issue, but it can really help in the meantime. So I think like also just teaching your body how to breathe, like that breathing sequence we talked about earlier, and just doing it, making sure that when you're not exhaling, your tongue is naturally on the roof of your mouth. Training that can be really, really helpful. And that is a component of it that I do like to coach, like the exhale, pause, tongue on the roof of the mouth, and then slowly, silently inhale without using your neck. That's it. That's a huge thing. But if people are interested in learning more, I'm in the process right now of posting case studies on my YouTube channel of people getting these dental appliances that help their tongue and their jaw position. And just hearing their stories are incredible. It's wild. Like I had one guy, um, and he said that after he got this appliance in, he could start memorizing numerical sequences. When before, like
Oh,
he had a
wow.
hard time doing that. Yeah, like he had like brain fog. He couldn't, he's an insurance guy, so he has to memorize like car VIN numbers or VIN numbers. And so he's like, yeah, I went home and did my job after this, and now I could memorize that number, whereas before I couldn't do that. So it's just
Oh
wild
my
the
gosh.
influence it has on the rest of the body. That being said, I do want to make a note that it's easy to look at this stuff and think it's like really, really cool. And it's like, oh, I for sure have that issue. When in reality, it's like, no, you probably don't. It's likely you just need to do the basics. It's likely you just need to learn how to move better. You need to learn how to stack the segments of your body a little bit better under load. You probably just need some basic mobility stuff, and you're going to start feeling better. That's what most
Mhm.
people need. So I just encourage people, like, if you're interested in it, go check out the YouTube videos. They're awesome. But I'm not trying to claim that this is like the fix for everyone's issues or like everyone needs to start worrying about this, because it's just not, it's not what most people need. But for the people that need it, it is literally the difference between being in pain and being out of pain. It is
I like that a lot.
so
I also
important.
like that it's minimal equipment.
Yeah.
If anything, being, obviously taping the mouth. And then what are some of the things that you've discussed a little bit about utilizing the towel in relation to the band and doing different forms of movement protocols associated with the jawline there? Free is the way to be. Life beats us up a bit and causes some bumps and bruises, but that doesn't mean we have to stay on the sidelines. This is why we've partnered with Kinnean Labs. Get back to doing what you love with this incredible portable device designed to get you back in the game. Kinnean is on a mission to move people from pain to possible with their top-rated red light therapy and laser solution, which tackles inflammation along with muscle and joint pain quickly and effectively. What I love is that it's portable and rechargeable, making it easy to actually incorporate into my everyday life consistently. It's small and lightweight, so you can throw it in your gym bag or work bag or even an overnighter. Kinnean's lasers and LED combo make this cutting-edge device extremely versatile for use with general aches and pains, as well as chronic back pain, arthritis, post-surgery recovery, endometriosis, and more. This has been an amazing tool keeping my elbows and knees pain-free for pressing, pulling, and squatting in the gym. Great tools like the Move Plus give me the freedom and flexibility to continue living life on my terms without limitations. There are a lot of reasons why over 15,000 people are using this device and rating it 4.7 stars and above. Head on over to Kineon.io and use code ALLSMITH at checkout to begin your pain-free journey.
Are you referencing like taking a towel and biting on it?
Yeah.
So the way that my perspective on this is that when you're moving through the world, right, you're going through the gait cycle, you have to have 3 different segments, main segments of your body be able to rotate to a given direction. You need your pelvis, your sacrum to turn towards that side. If you're shifting onto that side, you need your sternum to turn as you're shifting onto that side. And you need a bone in your cranium called your sphenoid to very, very, very subtly turn towards that side as well. And you need your jaw. Your jaw is going to also have a different position based off of that as well. So in essence, like, to make a very complicated thing more simple, if I need someone to learn how to shift from one side to the other, the side they're shifting onto, they need to be able to sense their back molars, their teeth on that side. If they can't, then they don't have, like, imagine like your molars are the heel of your mouth. If you don't have the ability to get that contact back there, then your body, and your cranium at least, doesn't have a good sense of the space and the ground on that side of your body. So this is like the theoretical stuff we're playing with right now, but there is research out there that suggests that your molars do have an influence on how you sense the ground and within your posture. So the idea is that if you were to bite down on something and train yourself to stay shifted into a given side, gently bite down, this is not a maximum contraction whatsoever, that should give your body an increased sense of grounding and an increased sense of stability on that side of your body. Which is why, let's go back to party tricks again. If you were to lay on your back and you were to put a popsicle stick in your mouth and bite down gently on your back molars on one side, retest your shoulder internal and external rotation, one side is going to make you better when you bite down. The other one's probably going to make you worse, because one side is evening out your molar contact. The other one is pushing you further into your asymmetry. So all these things are very repeatable, very, very consistent. I encourage people to try, just see what happens. It's fun. If nothing else, it's just fun. It's just cool to see how the body responds in that way neurologically.
It is fun. I also like that you called it a party trick, which is kind of fun.
Totally.
As we wrap things up today, Conor, I wanna discuss the topic of asymmetries. I feel like it's a popular topic right now. Me being former basketball guy, there's a ton of asymmetries, man.
Oh, yeah.
I mean, we're dominant on one side. You're obviously trying to improve the other side. When you shoot a basketball, one foot's typically slightly in front of the other. There's all kinds of things that do enhance the performance of the sport.
Yes.
And I love the statement, if it ain't broke, don't fix it. And so my question is, how much asymmetry is too much? Where do you start that conversation there, especially if it's working really well for somebody? It's probably at the onset of pain would be my guess. But if somebody's squatting, for example, and one foot's slightly in front of the other, do you immediately just jump in and try to correct that? Or are you kind of seeking to understand why? You're asking more questions. You're exploring a historical data up until that point with that person. I feel like these are things that are tossed around a lot within the fitness space.
Yes. I think that asymmetry is a problem when it becomes a problem. I know that's a bit of a cop-out answer, but I genuinely think like a lot of people can present very asymmetrical, have no problems at all their entire life, no pain. Other people...
And real quickly, are we supposed to be asymmetrical just
100%.
Because of our organs and whatnot?
There's a lot of different theories. Yes, organs for sure can play something into that. The asymmetry of your diaphragm muscle plays a big part in that. Your brain asymmetry plays a big part into it. If you want to get deep into the weeds entirely, then you can think about the way that fluid and the way our intestines have flow to them. They go from right to left, and the way that the earth spins, you can even get into that. The way that the earth is spinning is creating a rotational bias within our spine. because most people, according to some research, do have a more rightward facing pelvis and a more right side bend, lower right shoulder. It's something that we've seen very commonly. And there's different people that have identified this common compensatory pattern. So it's totally normal, and I have no issues with it whatsoever. But if someone has pain, my entire methodology is centered around the idea of, are you able to effectively shift into one side and get out of that side, and effectively shift into the other side and get out of that side? So if we're thinking about like the grounding conversation, can you push into your right side, sense the ground properly on that side, move into different joint positions, and then can you get out of the right side into the left side, sense the ground on that side, and then push out and repeat this whole process? Because if people can do that, generally speaking, they're doing pretty good. But almost everyone has some degree of asymmetry limiting them from doing that. So my question is, what gaps do I need to fill in? That's why if you have shin splints, maybe your inability to rotate your neck to the left side is throwing off the position of your rib cage's ability to do that too. So then you counter rotate somewhere at your pelvis, and then your femur rotates one direction, your shin's rotating the other to help balance you out or find something that you're missing up the chain. And now your tibia is all twisted up and you got shin issues. So like taking that perspective, I find, is very helpful. And I try not to make it that complicated when I explain it to people, but the idea is just basically, can you get in one side and out of the other? And if you're so limited in your ability to get into one side, you're for sure going to compensate to do that. But basketball players are the ultimate representation of people that are fantastic compensators. Like, look at LeBron. He has his feet turned out all the time. I've never seen that dude have straight feet. And that's just his compensation to find a propulsive strategy. And that's totally fine. He's a pretty relatively healthy player throughout his entire career. So, I think that asymmetries matter a lot when there's pain or significant movement dysfunction. But if there's not those things present, I'm not super worried about it. And I'm going to keep an eye on it. What's cool is that, like, through the assessments and basic things, like, let's say that, and this is something that I eventually want to research. I'm not claiming that this is like backed up in the literature, but this is something that I've noticed in my clients. If someone has a shoulder issue, let's say like their right shoulder hurts when they bench press. I've noticed that, let's say like a full shoulder internal rotation is like 70 degrees. Okay. So if someone has shoulder pain and their shoulder internal rotation on the first day is 20 degrees, and we get that up to 60, and we consistently see a theme that when their shoulder internal rotation before they bench is 60 degrees, they feel pretty good. The more data you gather on someone, the more you realize, okay, once you're in these numbers, you're generally feeling good. But once you dip below that, we might need to do something to improve that, so that way you have the space to move into, if their issue is biomechanical and not psychological or whatever. So understanding and gathering data on what is limiting that person and what numbers they need to hit to feel good, I find is immensely helpful for managing those asymmetries.
Yeah, that's a really good answer, man. What do you play with cognitively when somebody comes in and they're very intuitive with themselves? There's a constant comparison of left to right, upper to lower, front to back. Maybe they have some MRI imaging or some sort of x-ray that dictated something is a little bit off. And then they've experienced pain in the past. And now there's this psychosomatic approach or obsession with, I need all these correctives. I have to do this huge warm-up or I can't train. And I've seen it, especially in the basketball space, where like somebody moved so well. I've also seen it with soccer players. They move so well, so fluid. And then that injury takes place and there becomes this obsessive association with, oh, the right side's way different than the left and this, that, and the other. And it probably was before too. They just really didn't realize it. Mm-hmm. Where do you kind of attack that from a cerebral component where, like you said before, you're matching their energy, meeting them where they're at, but then it's almost a therapeutic exercise to reset and recalibrate the mentality? What is something you did as a child that you no longer do as an adult? For many, that answer is play. RX Smart Gear allows for your daily workouts to turn into play and exploration. In my training, the Frevo rope gives me access to a versatile rope that I can take with me wherever I go. On the road, at the beach, to the park, or playing at home, RX Smart Gear jump ropes fit my needs. We at Allsmith trust RX Smart Gear. Their gear is always reliable and gives me peace of mind that I will have top-notch equipment to support my health and fitness journey. Hop on over to RX Smart Gear and use the discount code ALLSMITH to shop their latest cutting-edge gear. Have your gear work with you and not against you.
I think that a couple of things. I've found that a lot of practitioners will tell their clients or patients what they're feeling is wrong, and it's not what the reality is. So let's say like someone comes in and they're insistent that one side is different than the other, but that's not actually the case. Honestly, I find that that's quite rare. I think a lot of people actually know what's going on within their body, and for someone to be like, that's not what I'm seeing, like that's not true. I think people immediately get turned off by that. That creates a huge problem. I think that people are generally correct about what they're feeling, and to feel validated in that is very important. That's why I have both static and dynamic testing that will tell you objectively how well can one side perform relative to the other. Because you have your basic table test, but you have more dynamic ability to like, okay, can you like truly represent the ability for you to shift in and out of this side? That's the key. And so they can see for themselves whether that's actually happening or not. And most of the time they're right. So I think when someone is very much like psychologically in a bad place because of these asymmetries, like it's very important to help them be like, yeah, no, like based off of my testing, everyone's asymmetrical. So like, it's easy to like tell. I can make it make sense to them based off of that testing. And I think that's what's really important for them to feel validated within it. But even if they're not super asymmetrical, I still try to help explain how they're feeling to them and help it make sense to them rather than telling them what they're feeling is wrong, or it's like, this isn't matching up with what I'm seeing. I don't want to tell them that necessarily. I want them to be like, oh, okay, based on what I'm seeing, this is why you're feeling that. And they're like, oh, okay, that makes a lot of sense.
Dude, you've got a world of knowledge. I really appreciated our conversation today. I want to cut this one a little short so we can get you to your lift to enjoy the rest of your day. But dude, it's really cool just kind of getting to know you and unpacking a little bit of your headspace a little bit, because as a good friend of mine would say, it's challenging traditional assumptions, right? Like my back is tight because of my psoas and my hip flexors. And it's like, well, maybe. And I think your content is out there, and I position and present that as a really great way to steer people towards your page, towards your Instagram, and towards your YouTube channel, because it's not always just the tight hip flexor. It's not always because of sitting too much. It's not always what we've been presented of just looking gently upstream and downstream. It is more complex more oftentimes. And then sometimes it's simple, and it can just be a small addition of resetting the nervous system through some of the breathing protocols that you mentioned, resetting the tongue, taping your mouth, and finding somebody that really can relate to you, match your energy, and then co-pilot your journey rather than egotistically being a dictatorship in that journey and just telling you why everything about you is wrong.
That's a beautiful summary. Yeah.
It was fun connecting with you. Where can people find you, Conor?
If people really want to get into my content, I recommend my YouTube channel. It's just Conor_Harris_. And that's also my Instagram handle. But I think that my YouTube channel is the best place for people to really start digging into it. I have a playlist of my best content. And also I have on my landing page of my channel, where do you start? So that should be helpful.
That's really cool. Always lowering the barrier to entry, man. That's a great way to get people out of pain. And guys, if you enjoyed my conversation with Conor Harris today and his pursuits of dedication to helping you move without limitations, check him out. Today was awesome, man. We're definitely going to have to wrap again.
Oh, for sure.
And for those of you listening, please rate, review, subscribe, share with your friends. And as always, stay on the hunt for who you've not yet become. Until next time, guys.